I'm Darryl Brown. Welcome to Shades of Us, a show that explores multicultural identities and how they intersect. We're here outside of Rudy's Music, a New York institution that's been helping musicians of all kinds find just the right guitar. In this episode, we'll talk about musical traditions and meet New Yorkers who have found their musical voices by traveling their own unique journeys. Stay tuned for these stories right after this. According to a 2023 International Federation of the Phonographic Industry report, the average person listens to nearly 1,000 minutes of music per year. That person hears roughly 1.3 million songs in their lifetime. Meet a Mexican musician based in Jackson Heights, Queens, who started a band that explores the traditional musical style of son jarocho.
Ok, mi nombre es Juan Carlos Marín, el nombre de mi banda es Huachinangos. Cuando yo llegué a Nueva York, estuve buscando una escuela de guitarra y empecé a tomar clases de música. En ese tiempo conocí a Gabriel Guzmán, que estaba interesado en hacer música, o más bien él estaba ya tocando música de tradicional mexicana con un proyecto que se llamaba Los Olvidados. Entonces él me invitó a ser parte de este proyecto y ahí fue donde aprendí.
Negro pero cariñoso.
Cuando yo estaba en una fiesta de mi amigo, la boda de un amigo, Gabriel Guzmán, ese día fue cuando lo conocí, Gabriel Guzmán estaba tocando son jarocho y empecé a ver cómo ejecutaba el instrumento del requinto y cómo estaba tocándose la jarana y en ese tiempo tenía guitarrón. Esa fue mi primera experiencia y me atrajo mucho la forma de ejecutar esos instrumentos. Y una de las canciones que tocaron, que es muy popular, se llama La Bamba. Eso también como que me regresó, porque al estar aquí en este país, que es un país donde uno está solo, escuchar La Bamba pues como que te conecta, ¿no? Te conecta, te da gusto escucharlo, ¿no? La banda Huachinango se inició en Filadelfia hace 5 años. Fue un proyecto que empecé a hacer, que era solamente música tradicional. Pero en el camino, por la falta de músicos de este tipo de género, empecé a trabajar con gente de Colombia, o gente de otros países que no eran exactamente de Veracruz. Entonces fue cuando empezó a hacerse una fusión. Y así se fue creciendo, o sea, fue con el tiempo cambiando en el camino, ¿no? El son jarocho tiene todas esas rutas de África, de música, bueno, más bien de rutas de la herencia indígena mexicana y de la española. Y me acerco a este tipo tratamos de acercarnos lo más cercano a este tipo de género en particular, pero nos hemos dado cuenta también mucho que las cosas han cambiado y también porque igual no vivimos ni cerca de Veracruz y igual estamos muy lejos, muy lejos. Me acuerdo, por ejemplo, que para poder yo aprender en ese tiempo, hace 20 y tantos años, no había internet, o sea, sí había, pero estaba empezando. Entonces tenía que yo aprender de cassettes, de gente que estaba investigando, de libros, de CDs por ahí que era muy... Entonces traté de acercarme lo más posible a lo que se hacía en Veracruz. Y lo he tratado de hacerlo siempre, todo el tiempo, gracias a los maestros que han llegado también de Veracruz acá a dar clases, ¿no? Tratamos de acercarnos lo más que podemos, pero nos damos cuenta también de que por el hecho de estar en una ciudad con tantos géneros alrededor, pues también nos toca pues como un poquito, pues como jugar un poco con lo que está pasando, bueno, tratar de ver lo que está pasando alrededor y tratar de hacerlo mejor en el género que estoy tocando. Pero igual, yo creo que sí he hecho un buen trabajo en lo que ha sido de la investigación, de la forma de tratarlo de hacer lo más jarocho posible, ¿no? Que igual todo ha sido una evolución, o sea, el son jarocho tradicional también ya no es nada comparado a lo que se hace ahora en esas comunidades, ¿no? Ha cambiado mucho.
Dicen que el mundo se acaba y yo digo que es mentira, el mundo solo se acaba.
Pero una comunidad en Veracruz que se quedó haciendo ese tipo de música tradicional, pues la sigue haciendo todavía, pero sí ha cambiado con el transcurso del tiempo, que es todo lo que pasa en cualquier género musical, evoluciona por la gente que viene atrás, ¿no? Sí. Yo creo mucho en eso, que también igual lo hacemos con mucho respeto, tratamos de hacer lo mejor posible, el mejor esfuerzo para que sea tradicional, pero sí sé que estamos haciendo el son jarocho aquí como una comunidad que vive aquí, ¿no? O sea, nos inspiramos de lo que vemos acá, de lo que hay en la calle, ¿no? De lo que hay. Y también, pues claro, Nueva York es una ciudad llena de gente, llena de diferentes lugares, de diferentes comidas, de diferentes culturas, de diferentes géneros musicales, pues se va mezclando todo esto y sin querer, ¿no? O sea, se va metiendo todo esto y va cocinándose otra cosa.
Music can change the world because it can change people. Here's a music director and conductor whose journey into classical music took many turns, but now he's focused on a repertoire that strikes a balance between choral and orchestral works.
When I hear classical music, I feel it viscerally in my body. When it works the way it's supposed to work, it does speak to you and it does make you feel things. And I think that that's one of the great gifts of the art form. My name is David Hayes. I'm a conductor and music director of the New York Choral Society. The journey of being a conductor is they either specialize in an instrument or the voice or something like that. I mean, you have to start training yourself musically somewhere. You don't just start as a conductor. My family was not particularly musical. My parents, they liked music, but they were not particularly musical. My grandmother on my father's side was a singer. She sang in choruses and was the musical one in the family. I always remember her, going off in concert black and, where are you going? And she was, I have a concert tonight. And it's like, okay, fine. But it didn't really pay much attention to it. She had been a member of the Tanglewood Festival Chorus, which is the Boston Symphony's chorus, where they had just done Beethoven Ninth Symphony, and it had been broadcast on the air. I heard it, and I just remember being completely thunderstruck by the music. I'd never heard anything like that. Finally convinced my grandmother that I was actually seriously interested after she had had all those experiences where she was not successful. She got me, they were singing a concert in Boston with the symphony, and she got me tickets to that program, and it was the first live orchestra concert I'd ever heard. So from there it just developed. I asked to take lessons. There was a kind of an old violin hanging around, so I ended up getting violin lessons. That was the first time I sort of thought, I think I want to do this. My earliest influence was the conductor of the Tanglewood Festival Chorus, John Oliver. because when I mean, I would literally going with my grandmother to chorus rehearsals. And here I was, this 12-year-old little snotty brat kid, sitting there watching how he worked with the chorus, watching how he fixed problems, how he solved problems. And it became a very important early influence on me because there was a model at a very high level that I could seek to emulate. The New York Choral Society is a large volunteer chorus, so it's about 150, 160 singers. I started in fall of 2012. At the time, I was working at Mannes at the New School as Director of Orchestral Studies and Conducting Studies, so I was working here in New York a bit, but I had most of my activities was in Philadelphia, where I was Music Director of Philadelphia Singers, professional chorus, and we were resident chorus of the Philadelphia Orchestra. So I was working with a big symphony chorus. The repertory they were focused on as a large symphonic chorus was mostly the kind of the standard big choral orchestral repertory. So they were particularly looking for someone who had experience not only with this repertory, but also had experience in terms of being able to conduct an orchestra alongside a chorus. Many incredibly fine choral conductors are not experienced with orchestra, and as a result, they're not as effective with the orchestra as they are with the chorus. And what the Choral Society was looking for was they were looking for that sort of rare person that could actually do both. The Choral Society's repertory historically has been what would be considered the more traditional choral music of the classical canon, if you want to call it that. I mean, these days we've been shying away from calling things, the canon masterpieces, but there are a bunch of works that exist that kind of form the core repertory of any large symphonic chorus. And those are the primarily 19th century big choral orchestral works. And while they had done more contemporary works, contemporary classical works, they had still mostly focused on the core repertory. When I came along, I started wanting to explore. I mean, I love the core repertory. It's wonderful. It's great music. But I also wanted to explore repertory more of our time. I have a lot of relationships with composers. I love working with living composers. It's always nice. You can ask them a question. And so I wanted to broaden the repertory of the chorus to include more of those works that were more contemporary music of our time, in balance with the more traditional core repertory that had been part of their music making for the 60+ years that they had been around. The putting together of the choral and orchestral elements into one unit becomes a challenge because you not only have this very large choral ensemble, you have a large orchestra, sometimes soloists. The most important thing is that you treat the chorus and the orchestra as a unit, that you don't focus on one to the exclusion of the other. You're blending the elements all together in a way that creates something bigger than any of the parts. I don't want people to feel that they have to be passive in receiving the performance. I want people to feel energized and excited by it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have been able to do that, because it's not that I have been setting out to sort of carve out, well, this is going to be my legacy. It's just that I do my thing, and fortunately there are elements of it that people find incredibly meaningful and that give them insights that change their lives, and that to me is hugely satisfying.
We'll be back after this break. Folk music is characterized by its use of traditional acoustic instruments and meaningful lyrics. Let's look at two artists from different cultures who share the same music genre.
Listen here, listen up, it's been months of swill, I'm so sick and still.
Music for me is everything. It is connection. It's the way I've become connected with every person that's ever had meaning in my life. It has given me purpose, it's given me strength. I am Liz Chittister. I am a singer, songwriter, actor, and teaching artist. I know that the music is bad when I feel the ego rise, and I know the music is good when it's gone. It exposes it pretty blatantly. It's also showed me where my ego is, and it showed me where my higher self is, too.
Music for me is life. This existence is the only thing I know, and it means it's the chosen weapon to go through life because it deals with the language of the unknown. My name is Nilko Andreas. I'm a classical musician, composer, and conductor. With music, I get to certain feelings that I received and that I project that are impossible to intellectualize or to explain. And it touches the soul in very deep ways. We met working for Virgin, the company, on a new project led by Sir Richard Branson. And Liz was part of a theater troupe.
I was working with Pigpen Theater Company on it was called Phantom Folk Tales. So it was taking folk music and puppetry and poetry, and we were popping up out of nowhere doing theater and then disappearing. It was really beautiful.
And I was music director for everything that had to do with live music in this project. And then I just heard her singing, and I was like captivated by the voice. I was like, who's this person? I want to meet this person.
I would say, like, I heard you play, and I was like, he should be somewhere. He should be in Carnegie Hall. I was really excited to keep learning from Nilko because I really hadn't been exposed to any, I would say, like, folk music from South America, from other countries in general. And so I was really curious. We were starting to trade songs and just kind of falling in love with each other inside of these songs, I think.
And then one thing led to the other.
Mm-hmm.
How did I grow into this? I've gotta get the good out of my life.
I was born in Virginia, and I moved around the mountains of Virginia and North Carolina as a kid. I ended up in Bedford, Virginia, so I like to say I'm from, like, the mountains of Virginia.
Frozen in their place, disappearing by the tracks inside my mind. But why were you so...
Like a lot of different kinds of energy, I think, from both sides of the family. And there was music on both sides. My grandfather, my father's side, was really into classical music, so was my grandmother. My aunts took voice lessons, things like that. My father is a really great singer. He also played the drums, and then he quit when we were born. And then my mother is very musical too. She took, like, classical guitar when she was in high school, piano lessons, things like that, but they did not end up being musicians, just music appreciators. So when they saw that I had musical talent, they were really excited, and they were always really encouraging of me. And then my brother was the football player, the guy that was going to be the doctor. However, he started to sing when he was in high school, and so I dragged him to be in the musical with me. So he started to sing as well, and is now, in that sort of universe as well. So I was in a band for a time with my brother as well.
Not knowing what was on the other side.
I was born and raised and bred in Bogota, Colombia, South America, to a very Colombian mom and a very Colombian dad. I was exposed to music since very early in my life. I went to the music conservatory when I was 5. But growing up in Colombia, I was always exposed to the folk elements of music. I started playing traditional Colombian music from the different regions of the country. Later in life, I started working and making a living by playing traditional and now so traditional Latin American music all over the country. And then I came to the States to study in the year 2000, also classical music. And I went to the music conservatory to pursue and continue my studies on classical guitar and composition and orchestral conducting. However, even though I tried to stay in the classical world, life took me, and my Latin roots took me to be exposed and to practice and to make a living playing all sorts of different styles. And with the blessing of New York City that teaches you and shows you different styles of music. If I trust And it was then where I really started learning and studying all the folk traditions of the so-called American music, more specifically the Appalachian kind of roots music, Americana, country music. So it's been a beautiful journey of discovery.
We started, I think, calling it Latin Americana, even though I feel like that's still not we're circling, I think, the center on like what it exactly is.
I do believe, because of my experience in life, that folk music and the folk elements in people are the best representation of their culture and their state as a country, as a community, as a culture, right? When you listen to folk songs, it doesn't matter which country, you get in touch with very deep with the essence of that culture, because people express through art, and especially through music, their deepest feelings.
That's our show. If you want to know more about the guests we featured, check out our Instagram page at Shades of Us TV and online at tv.cuny.edu. You can now download the app and watch CUNY TV from wherever you are. I'm Darryl Brown. See you next time on Shades of Us.